What is going on? I never thought I'd see the day. Is Nicki Minaj going Christian? Did she okay this with the Barbs? Are the Barbs okay with this? I don't know, man. Anyway, look. If you don't already know, and I'm sure that you do know, apparently Nicki Minaj has gone Christian. That's right. She's doing the Kanye rebrand. But I think the real question now is, can an artist who built like an empire on one specific image, right, that doesn't necessarily match up with the word of God, can she successfully pivot and reinvent herself as a Christian artist? Or like, how does that work? And more importantly, will her core audience follow her? Now, before I go there, a lot of people forget how Nicki got this big, right? I mean, before she was a pop icon, I just kind of knew her as that lady from all the mixtapes who could really rap. Going crazy with freestyles. She had these crazy punchlines. And she just kind of started like a New York girl rapping, no booty, tank top and jeans, right? And then slowly over time, she really blew up when she went down south and she was with Gucci and Waka's mom, right? And she just ends up being this girl that's on all these Atlanta records that everybody thought was from Atlanta. They didn't know she was from New York. And then she starts dropping more mixtapes and her name gets bigger just by her association with Gucci and Waka. And she's not so poppy at this point, right? But you can see a little bit of the pop there, right? And then of course, she gets signed on Young Money and she goes full pop. Like, she's the rap Katy Perry, rap Lady Gaga. She's got the big shades, colorful music videos, and lots of pink and stuff like that. Her music becomes very, very, very sexual, even bisexual at some points, right? And it's just got that happy-go-lucky vibe that you usually associate with pop music. And these kind of huge pop bridges, while still staying somewhat in that hip hop lane, but it's very clear she was trying to adapt to the female pop music that was going on at the time. And she just really becomes a force, not just in hip hop, but in pop. She kicks Lil' Kim out of her place, right? And it's funny because Lil' Kim was kind of doing the Barbie thing first. She was doing that in the 90s. But then, Kim is invited to get on a song with Nicki Minaj and Baby from Young Money. Something goes wrong and she accuses them of stealing her style, stealing her look, and running with it, right? Something that's interesting because something similar happens to Nicki a little later down the line, right? More on that later. And so, yeah, Nicki blows up, and as pop as she is, it's hard to really front on her at this time because she's still able to out-rap lots of people, male and female. She gets on that monster record with Jay-Z and Kanye and just hurts all the Jay-Z and Kanye stans' feelings, including me, because she just out-raps them easily. Like, just the way she flips her words and the metaphors that she's using, her delivery, just, it stands out on a record, right? It stands out. She really makes waves when she kills them on that record. Kills two of the biggest rappers at the time on this record. And she's this pop rapper. Like, nobody's expecting that, but she really shows, I can't just out rap all the women. I can out rap a lot of you dudes, right? And she stays outshining people on records. And then of course, she gets even poppier. She goes into her Starships era, Super Bass, Anaconda, you know what I'm saying? And again, the music is still very sexualized, very gay friendly, very materialistic. But what's interesting is even in that, every now and then she'll say something showing that she does have some kind of reverence for God, right? She does have little lines here and there that shows she believes in the one true God. She even kind of references a lot of Bible verses in past interviews. And maybe this new turn that Nicki Minaj is taking isn't new, right? Maybe it's just the culmination of years of her trying to balance God and the world, and she just finally had to pick a side, as we all do eventually, right? Because it's hard to have your feet in two different camps and stay sane. And who knows, maybe that's why a lot of these rappers say they don't have any peace and they gotta take drugs to go to sleep and they're high all the time. Maybe it's because they're trying to do what the world wants them to do, but their heart is telling them they need to serve God, right? And it's hard to have your feet in both camps, right? It's like that prophet Elijah said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If you want to serve Baal, serve Baal. If you want to serve God, then serve God. You know what I'm saying? But you can't really serve both. Anyway, she's like the top female rapper in the game for a very, very long time. Maybe like 8-9 years or something like that, right? And then something interesting happens. Then she starts taking some L's, right? Cardi comes into the game and people love her, right? Because while Nicki Minaj has a reputation as a mean girl, whether that's true or not, we don't know. Cardi B, on the other hand, people love her. She comes from social media and people just love her personality and they feel like Cardi's their homegirl. And so even though Cardi can't really rap like that, she gets mad fans just for being super likable, right? She is the antithesis of Nicki in that aspect, right? And then Cardi B breaks the door down for even more female rappers, right? All ratchet, of course, naturally. And then Nicki goes from having no competition to just Cardi to having Doechii, Glorilla, Lotto, City Girls. Like, she's surrounded by other female rappers. Doja Cat. You know what I'm saying? Meg The Stallion. And what's funny is that a lot of these girls are so ratchet, they almost make Nicki look classy in comparison, which is crazy, right? Right? And Nicki Minaj starts to have a hard time dealing with the fact that she does now have competition, right? And it started with Cardi, right? She tries to get on a record with Cardi. Something goes wrong in that recording process, and Nicki leaves saying, yo, they trying to muscle me out the business. They trying to take my style and run with it. Same thing Lil' Kim said about Nicki. So that doesn't go well. Her and Cardi end up having lots and lots of beef. The new girls come in and they end up having to pick sides. They either gonna be on team Nicki or gonna be on team Cardi. And Nicki gets this reputation of not playing well with others, not really co-signing new artists, and she gets known as kind of like this mean girl because people don't understand why Nicki has such a problem with Cardi. They look at her like a hater. You know, Nicki tries to reach out to other young artists to work with them to kind of clear up this reputation of hers, but it keeps ending badly, right? And I'm not saying it's Nicki's fault it ends badly. We don't know what's happening here. You know what I'm saying? We just know she keeps falling out with different artists for some reason. It becomes like her against the industry. And people start to question, yo, is Nicki done? Are these new rap females outdoing her? Like, is she old news? And people think Nicki's done. They're like, yo, she's done. Her career's over. Pink Friday 2 drops and it's like nostalgic. It goes back to that old, really poppy Nicki sound and boom, she sells a whole bunch of records. She's still the highest selling female rapper currently. Like, Cardi B has yet to outsell her. So she's still showing like, yo, I still do this better than y'all. I still sell more records than y'all. Then things start to get weird, right? This is where her career really starts to take a turn. She goes crazy on Roc Nation. She accuses them of trying to sabotage her career. She accuses Jay-Z and his partners of trying to ruin her and saying that they tried to replace her with Meg The Stallion. And she goes on Twitter and Instagram just making a lot of wild accusations about Jay-Z and Roc Nation, right? The thing is, they could be true. She's not the only one that says certain things about how Jay-Z and Roc Nation moves, but she said it the loudest and she said it the most. You know, Nicki Minaj on Twitter is like Nicki Minaj in her records. She's very animated. She's very wild. And so a lot of times it looks crazy, right? It didn't necessarily help her career. She's like the crazy person at the town square just screaming to herself. You know what I mean? Everybody's kind of like, yo, what's wrong with this girl? Again, she could be telling the truth, right? But I think sometimes it's how you say things, not what you say. It would have been better for her to say it on a record than just scream it wildly on Twitter like a crazy person, like she's going on a rant or something like that. At a certain point in time in history, if you said something negative about Nicki Minaj, the barbs were gonna jump you. Not physically, but verbally. They was gonna clown your profile pic. They was gonna clown how many followers you had. All your pictures that you upload, they're like, why your car look like that? You look broke. Why you riding in a Honda Civic? You know what I'm saying? Why you ain't got no friends in your pictures? You must be lonely. And the whole time, Nicki is liking all their comments. Let's just be honest. Nicki has her own online terror cell. Like, she belongs in Guantanamo Bay. Through all her ups and downs in the industry, she always knew she could count on this loyal fan base. Now, I think the real question is she gonna still be able to maintain that after everything that's happened now with her new term? This all starts when Trump threatens to bomb a Nigerian terror cell. And Nicki Minaj supports this because she says, hey, these terrorists are killing Christians in Nigeria and somebody needs to do something about it. This shocks people all over the hip hop community because they're like, yo, is she giving Trump props? If you're not paying attention, that's shocking, but Trump actually has a lot of support in the hip hop community. So that wasn't crazy to me, but a lot of people were shocked by this. And Nicki Minaj, she doubled down. She's like, nah, people are being killed. He's doing something about it. Of course, then Nicki Minaj shocks people even more. Then we see her join Charlie Kirk's wife at his organization, TPUSA. They have a little like interview, and Nicki Minaj claims, yo, it's like I've been blind and now I can finally see. The scales are finally falling off and I'm not being controlled anymore. And Nicki starts to go hard for the Republican Party and conservative politics. Nicki Minaj again is under a lot of backlash for this, and not just from regular fans. A lot of her core fan base doesn't agree with this, right? Barbs, there's a huge amount of Barbs who are part of the LGBTQ community, and some of them are like, these conservative parties don't really like us like that, so we can't rock with this. Some of her fans looking at her crazy. The black community, hip-hop community is looking at her kind of crazy, and they're kind of like, what's going on here? Where's the my anaconda don't want none Nicki Minaj, right? Everybody's confused. Now you're seeing her on like Christian podcasts, just talking about her faith in God and talking about how she feels like the music the industry makes is demonic and so on and so forth. And so I think the big question here is, can a major artist switch to Christian music and still be majorly successful, right? And we've only seen it done successfully twice. That's Kanye West and Bob Dylan. And both of those artists threw in the towel after a while because they wanted to go back to talking about the things that they liked to talk about. So we've yet to see a major artist really go into the Christian lane and stay there. And after calling her old music demonic, it's like, if you go to Christian music and then you come back to secular, it's gonna be kind of weird. You told us that this was evil. Now, what's she gonna rap about? Is she gonna rap about God? Does her fan base want to hear her do Sunday service? Has the Christian rebrand ever really worked? As an artist, rebranding yourself as a Christian is like rebranding yourself as a Christian in real life. Some of the relationships that you hold dear start to disintegrate the closer you get to God. And you start to realize that the only thing holding your old friendships together was the things that you both shouldn't have been doing. I have friends where without drinking or going to the strip club, we have nothing in common. And we don't talk like we used to talk. I have friends that saw me clean my life up and they were like, we support you, but we ain't really trying to go down that route. We have fun. You're bound to lose people the closer to God you get, because a lot of people are in the dark because they know if they step into the light, they're gonna have to change things because they know what they're doing is wrong, but there's no light being shown on it. So as long as they stay in the dark, they don't have to think about the bad things they're doing because nobody's shining a light on it. Everybody's in the dark together. But once you get that light inside of you and you start to shine, it starts to stand out. That light stands out amongst the darkness, and they start to see through your good actions how bad their actions are. And so the first thing they do is try to get away from the light. They're like, you got to take that light and take it somewhere else because we like the dark over here. We want to be blind. I wonder what happens with the Barbs. Like, do they want to hear her do Christian music? What happens with her beef with Cardi? You know what I'm saying? Is she just gonna let Cardi be the #1 rap chick now? Can she step aside and let Cardi be #1 without feeling some type of way? She's not gonna diss Cardi anymore. She's not gonna hit her with subliminals. That's hard for me to imagine, but maybe that's where she's headed. You know, you know what I mean? Is Nicki Minaj cool with stepping away from her #1 spot after all these years? What if the money's not the same? Is Nicki Minaj willing to profit less financially riding with God? Because that's going to be a choice she's going to have to make. You know, that's a choice that we all have to make, right? Because even if it's not financial, there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of fun things that we could be doing if we weren't walking with God. And at a certain point, you have to choose, like God already said, like you can't worship both God and mammon. And it's like, which one are you going to worship? Money or God? What are you going to worship? The opportunity or God? God is very clear. Whoever's a friend to the world is an enemy of God. What God might offer you isn't always gonna look glamorous. It may not always lead to a glamorous lifestyle. But what God's clear on is whatever he offers you is gonna be better for you in the end than whatever the world could offer you. Maybe that secular record would have sold millions of albums, but maybe that gospel record is gonna save some people's soul. Maybe that gospel album is gonna leave you with peace. Because a lot of these secular rappers, they keep talking about how they don't have peace. Nicki Minaj talked very clearly about her drug use and her drinking struggles. And maybe the type of music that she makes plays a part in that. I don't know. I don't know her personally. Maybe there's just a lack of peace doing things the worldly way, doing things the secular way, when you know what the truth is in your heart. It's hard to give up your old life for God sometimes because, you know, you have these memories connected with it. You know, it made you the person that you are, right? Some of the music and the movies that we watched coming up, it's what made us who we are. But at the same time, I think a lot of times God saying who you are comes with a lot of problems because sometimes who you are is actually against God and you just never realized it. A lot of us learned our views on sex and relationships from the music and movies that we watch that we love. But a lot of that is evil and God's saying, no, I'm against all that. You know, you know what I'm saying? I'm against some of the things that you are. I need you to be reborn. God's not about who you are. God is about reshaping and rebuilding who you are in his image. He loves you regardless, right? But he loves you too much to not bring you to your full potential, right? He doesn't want you to live below what your potential is. Our potential is to be the reflection of God. Now, here's the good thing. I think Nicki can still be a Christian artist and sell units. I mean, Kanye did with Jesus is King, right? Like, Jesus is King was not his least selling album. Not even close, actually. Now, he does have a very different fan base. You know, his fan base has evolved and changed over time. And Nicki, you know, her fan base, you know, they've been pretty consistent in who they are over all these years. So I guess the question is really, do they want to go along with her? Like, are they going to take this journey with her? You know what I mean? And I think on this next album, you know, Nicki has to like dig deep, right? And talk about everything that's going on with her mentally and spiritually, all her triumphs, all her woes, but, you know, through a Christian lens and the journey it took to get to this point. She can't wear pink wigs and rap about her booty over 808s forever. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, she has to grow regardless of what she believes in. She has to grow because she's like, what, 42, 43? Like, she can't keep doing the same thing forever or she's going to start to look crazy. I could see her maybe like making something with some like neo soul type beats. You know what I mean? Maybe she loses a few fans, but then maybe she gains some more, right? You know what I mean? I could see her getting into her miseducation bag. If she gets political though, I think that's gonna be a mistake. You know, I think God just wants you to be vocal about God. Why play in this little sandbox when you can just play on the whole playground? Well, my biggest fear is sometimes when secular artists start doing Christian music, it comes off really, really corny and they start like rapping under their ability, when I think it should be the opposite, right? Like, now you really have to go out of your way to make sure you're a good lyricist, right? She's gotta have the most immaculate bars she's ever had in her career, I feel like, to really pull this off. There's arguably right now more interesting Christian rappers than secular, also because the secular artists are just not talking about anything anymore. But you know, you do have an Indie Tribe or, you know, a J Monty, IMRSQ or Caleb Gordon. You know, they've got some people that are kind of good now, right? Alex Jean, you know, they have rappers that are good. Technically, Christian music is a good spot where you can find some depth and find some like deep content to write about if they can fight that urge to be cheesy. Because people, for some reason, I don't know, they just equate talking about God to, I have to be cheesy now. And you know, honestly, she may never outsell Cardi B again. That might be the trade-off, right? She may no longer be the highest selling female if she takes this route. But you know, maybe Billboard is the wrong list to be trying to get on. Maybe that's not the list that you should be worried about. God's got his own list, right? And that one is arguably way more important. You know what I'm saying? Like, the only list that matters when you're dead is God's list, right? And you want to be on that list. You want to be in the book of life. You know what I'm saying? God's not gonna care that you were on Billboard. These things aren't gonna be remembered when you're dead. But you know what he is gonna remember? what did it take for you to get on Billboard? How many of God's laws did you break to get on those lists? How many people did you turn towards wickedness or steer towards wickedness just to get on that list? That's what God's gonna remember. But honestly, I'm not even gonna lie. If she stops rapping about her BBL, I'll be perfectly happy. Peace. See y'all next week.